Ross, put the women and children to bed and go looking for dinner. Jon Rothstein here on Inside College Basketball Now. I want to remind you to subscribe to Inside College Basketball Now on both Apple and Spotify. We want to be your Bible for the college basketball season and beyond. We are the only college basketball podcast coming to you 52 weeks out of the calendar year. Also want to remind you to like and subscribe to the show on YouTube. We want to get to 300 likes on this particular show. So make sure to like and subscribe on the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube page. And also want to remind you from a programming standpoint that Inside College Basketball Now will be coming to you live at 1 o'clock Eastern on Mondays and Thursdays during the 25-26 college basketball season. So get into the chat, leave a comment. I'll get to it later in the show, and make us part of your routine on Mondays and Thursdays. And if you can't get to us live at 1 o'clock because you have a lunch meeting or you have something else, get us on your commute home on Apple and Spotify, or catch us in the morning as part of your early morning workout. But we, again, need an army with us for every single episode of this show. And we want you to be a part of that army. So be all you can be. And it's a really, really fun time now on the college basketball calendar. We're getting ready to turn the corner to conference play. You are starting to see more teams separate themselves. But we still have a slew of big storylines from this week and a slew of big storylines to look ahead to this weekend. And as always, we condense those into three big things. And the first big thing I want to get to revolves the starting point guard for the Arkansas Razorbacks, the team that I believe is unequivocally the most complete team in the SEC, and that's Darius Acuff. And Darius Acuff deserves more national attention. Now, I remember when I was starting on the college basketball beat roughly 20 years ago, John Calipari was building his program at Memphis. And in 2006 and in 2007, John Calipari had really good teams at Memphis that had Darius Washington Jr. at point guard in 2006, and then he had Willie Kemp at point guard in 2007. Those teams went to the Elite Eight and lost to UCLA and Ohio State, respectively. They were good teams. They won 3 NCAA tournament games, but they couldn't get over the hump. The next year, that changed. That's when John Calipari recruited Derrick Rose to the University of Memphis. He led Memphis to a 38-2 season and an appearance in the 2008 national title game. Now, I remember during the 07-08 season interviewing John Calipari and him talking about the significance of getting a player like Derrick Rose to Memphis. And he told me, because I got Derrick Rose at Memphis, I now am going to be able to recruit the best point guard in the country each and every year. And you look at what's happened in time since Derrick Rose went to Memphis. Tyreek Evans followed him in Memphis. Then John Calipari goes to Kentucky. These are the point guards he had chronologically when he got to Lexington. John Wall and Eric Bledsoe, Brandon Knight, Marcus Teague, Andrew Harrison, Tyler Ulis, Jamal Murray, De'Aaron Fox, and the list kept getting better and better as time went on. And with all that said, now at Arkansas, there is a player in Darius Acuff that is performing very quietly, in my opinion, like one of the best guards in college basketball. Entering Saturday's game against Houston at the Prudential Center in Newark, which is an Elite Eight caliber game, and I am so fortunate that I will be on the call for that game with Rich Waltz and Steve Lapis, 5:30 Eastern, Saturday on CBS. Darius Acuff is an All-American who is hiding in plain sight. Darius Acuff is playing right now like a second or third team All-American for Arkansas, and nobody wants to talk about it. And I went over the numbers before we got on the air just to look at what he is doing. And numbers are not everything, but they obviously tell you a lot. In the last 4 games, since Arkansas lost to Duke on Thanksgiving night, a game that Darius Acuff also played really well in, Darius Acuff is averaging 19.5 points and 9 assists. And during that stretch, his assist-to-turnover ratio is 36-7. That's better than 4-1 for those of you keeping score at home. So if you're looking now at the best point guards in college basketball, and I'm going to get to more of this later in the show, and you're having conversations, you obviously have to talk about Braden Smith at Purdue, who is going to be a first-team All-American. You obviously have to talk about Jaden Bradley at Arizona, who has been such an integral part, especially in crunch time, of what the Wildcats have been able to do out of gate. You want to talk about LeBaron Philon at Alabama? He has completely changed his perception since flirting with the NBA draft and coming back. After those guys, Darius Acuff belongs in the conversation of being an elite point guard in college basketball. He is a top 5 point guard right now in college basketball. And next week, before we break for the holidays, I am going to give you my midseason All-Americans for the 25-26 college basketball season. Darius Acuff right now is firmly in the mix to be a midseason All-American. And look, we had John Calipari on this podcast a couple of weeks ago before Arkansas played Duke in Chicago. And he said that Darius Acuff reminded him of Chris Paul. That's as high a praise as you can give to a point guard. And now with that said, we still have an awful lot of season left. But one of the things that I have talked about ad nauseum, and I've been talking for months now about the idea of Arkansas winning the SEC regular season title, being a high seed in the NCAA tournament. One of the reasons why this is coming to fruition is because Arkansas is built with a backcourt of Acuff and Malik Thomas that is comparable to some of the backcourts that John Calipari has had at Kentucky and had in the past at Kentucky, but it's not getting the same attention because it's at Arkansas and not Kentucky. If these players had Kentucky on their chest and John Calipari was the coach, the perception would be completely different. But it's no longer an oversight. It is a flat-out insult that we are not talking about Darius Acuff as one of the best guards and players in the sport. And the stakes will be raised Saturday afternoon against Houston, Kelvin Sampson, and another terrific freshman point guard in Kingston Flemings. It is an Elite Eight caliber game. It is a heavyweight showdown, and it's another opportunity for Arkansas to prove its mettle against the top-tier opponent. Arkansas went to Michigan State, was not as far along as it was, especially in the backcourt with Acuff and Thomas, lost a really close game. The freshmen played like freshmen. I was at the game. I worked the game in Chicago when Arkansas played Duke Thanksgiving night. Arkansas went blow to blow with Duke for 35, 36 minutes. Cam Boozer took over down the stretch, lost that game. But in the last couple of weeks, Arkansas decisively beat Louisville. Arkansas beat Texas Tech. You are starting to see now Arkansas turn a corner and separate itself, in my opinion, among teams in the SEC. Alabama, obviously a team that's battled a lot of injuries, is really, really potent offensively. Just had another big offensive night against South Florida on Wednesday. Florida is getting much better play out of Xavier Lee at point guard. He's strung together several productive games in a row. But if you're looking now at the SEC from 30,000 feet, you can throw Vanderbilt in the mix, even though they haven't obviously played as tough of a schedule, but they are undefeated. We'll see what happens with Kentucky, and we'll get to Kentucky more later in the show. But Arkansas is a team, in my opinion, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, that is the most complete team in the SEC. And the head of a snake is Darius Acuff. And if you haven't taken inventory of what he's doing right now, you are not taking inventory of a player that is performing at a level, and there's a lot more season to obviously go, but he is performing at a level where he deserves to be mentioned among the best freshman point guards that John Calipari has had. I'm not talking about projecting for the next level. I am not talking about projecting for the future and be mentioned with the guys that I had mentioned. I'm not saying he's going to be John Wall or Tyrese Maxey or De'Aaron Fox or any of these guys at the next level. I'm talking about with what he is doing right now in college basketball, the way he's running this team, the way he's able to combine his ability to score with his ability to distribute. You have to now start looking at Darius Acuff as a potential All-American, a potential SEC Player of the Year candidate, and also a player that deserves to be mentioned among the best freshman point guards that John Calipari has had, at least in the conversation. It's colds on the back end, but we're still getting through it. Now, in addition to that, there are other big things to get to in college basketball. One of them revolves around a team that's won 2 of the last 3 national championships, the UConn Huskies. More on that when we return. Jon Rothstein here on Inside College Basketball Now.
This is European soccer's biggest stage.
Written in the stars! What a difference she has made!
The question is, can you handle it?
Can you handle it?
The crowd here feels electric. Stream every match of the UEFA Women's Champions League on Paramount+.
All right, Jon Rothstein back here on Inside College Basketball Now. I want to remind you, subscribe to Inside College Basketball Now on both Apple and Spotify. We want to be your Bible for the college basketball season and beyond. We are the only college basketball podcast coming to you 52 weeks out of the calendar year. Also, want to remind you to like and subscribe on YouTube. Leave a comment. Get us in the chat. I will get to your comments later in the show. We want 300 likes for this particular show. You have any thoughts on anything that's going on in college basketball? We want to hear from you. We want an army with us on each and every show here on Inside College Basketball Now. Be all you can be and join us here every Monday and Thursday during the 25-26 college basketball season at 1 o'clock Eastern. If you can't make that, be sure to get us on Apple and Spotify on your commute home, during your early morning workout. Make sure you stay with us for every single episode. And remember, in addition to live shows on Mondays and Thursdays at 1 o'clock, we are also going to have exclusive interviews in other episodes during the week with the biggest and the best names in the sport. On Friday morning, we'll be bringing you an exclusive sit-down with Kentucky's Mark Pope. Now, let's get to the second big thing on the radar. UConn has the cleanest path of the elite teams to be a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. What do I mean by that? I've said this earlier in the week, and I'm going to say it again. If you are not putting UConn among the elite teams in college basketball right now, you are doing yourself a major disservice. Because you look at things now, and obviously there are certain teams that have made major statements. Arizona and Michigan are at the top of the list. They deserve all the accolades that they're getting with the way they're performing. Arizona has the best resume in the sport. Michigan is pounding teams into submission and winning games by TKO. Duke has an incredible resume. Iowa State had the season's best win at Mackey Arena against Purdue. But UConn has navigated the best non-conference schedule in the history of UConn basketball and has one blemish. One blemish. That is a home loss to Arizona when Tarris Reed and 5-star freshman Braylon Mullins were not in the lineup. And you better believe that anybody who is evaluating seeds for the NCAA tournament will remember that. So what do I mean when I say UConn has the cleanest path to a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament out of all the elite teams? Arizona, Michigan, and Iowa State are all going to have to play in either the Big Ten or the Big 12. Looking at my bracket projections for tomorrow and my weekly bracket breakdown, those are going to be conferences where it's going to be close to double-digit representation in terms of bids in the NCAA tournament. And if you're looking at Arizona and Iowa State, those two programs are going to have to play in a conference with each other, with BYU, with Kansas, with Houston, with a loaded slate of teams. Texas Tech as well. Michigan and Dusty May, even though I think that the Wolverines could be 20-0 going into a game in late January in East Lansing, is going to have to play again a larger number of NCAA tournament caliber teams than a team like UConn. Now, you might say, John, how can then UConn be in a situation where it has a cleaner path to be a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament? It's real simple. UConn has already built equity with what it has done during its non-conference schedule, the best non-conference schedule in the history of college basketball when it comes to UConn's perspective, the best non-conference schedule in the history of UConn. The Florida win in the Jimmy V Classic is going to travel. The Illinois win is going to travel as well. The win at Kansas is going to travel as well. Then you have to remember UConn also beat BYU in Boston. UConn, as of today, is 11-1. There are 19 regular season games remaining for the Huskies. I would be shocked if UConn, who opened Big East play the other night in Hartford with a convincing win over Butler, I would be shocked if UConn wins any fewer than 16 of its next 19 regular season games. What does that mean? That means if UConn were to finish 17-3 in Big East regular season play, right now you look at the Big East Conference, St. John's looks like the only team that you can say without hesitation will definitely be an NCAA tournament team out of the Big East. Want to credit Shaheen Holloway. He would be my vote for Coach of the Year right now if we were looking at the Big East, him or Dan Hurley, for the award. But the only time UConn is going to face a team during these next 19 regular season games where you say this team is a lock for the NCAA tournament are going to be the 2 games against St. John's. So if UConn wins 16 of its next 19 games at minimum, UConn is going to be 27-4 going into the Big East tournament. And remember, the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee, and I know this because I've been inside the room where there's been the mock selection of the bracket in Indianapolis. It was a great exercise. You are evaluated for the NCAA tournament with the team that you're going to use in the NCAA tournament. If Braylon Mullins and Taris Reed are obviously ready in UConn's starting lineup, that's going to be taken into consideration. UConn's also going to have 3 games in the Big East tournament. So even if you went to the finals and lost, if you're 27-4 going in, you're 29-5. And if you win it, you're 30-4. Now, what about the fact that the teams who are going to be competing with UConn for number 1 seeds, Michigan, Arizona, Purdue, Iowa State, Duke, what about the fact that they're going to be in leagues with greater difficulty? This is what I want to remind people. Last year, St. John's was in a situation where it didn't win any major non-conference games. Lost a heartbreaker to Baylor, lost to Georgia. But St. John's wound up winning the Big East regular season and tournament title and went on a run that is comparable to the run that I am forecasting for UConn over the next 2.5 months. St. John's was a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. And St. John's didn't have nearly the equity built up that UConn has done through the first 2 months of the season after going through the best non-conference schedule in the history of UConn basketball. I look at UConn now like this. I look at UConn as a team that I expect, again, to be a minimum 17-3 in the Big East. I expect them to have a minimum of 27 wins going into the Big East tournament. And I see them as a team that is teed up to be the number 1 seed in the East on Selection Sunday. That would mean Dan Hurley and company would start in Philadelphia and then go to Washington for the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8. And I talked about this on Monday's show as well. UConn and Duke are the 2 teams you have to keep an eye on in the East region as an arms race, but Duke has a much more difficult path to get there. Duke has Texas Tech Saturday night at the Garden. Duke's going to play Michigan in Washington, D.C. in February, and Duke is also going to have to navigate a much better ACC than we've seen. Virginia's really, really good. Like, really, really good. I am bullish on Virginia. Carolina is better than we thought, and Seth Trimble is in a situation where he is going to return in the near future. Louisville's obviously talented. We've also seen Jay Lucas at Miami make great strides. SMU's a good basketball team. NC State, Virginia Tech, Notre Dame. I think the top half of the ACC is much more capable than we thought. I think the ACC is going to be a 7 or 8 bid league. It's going to be harder for Duke to navigate that, and that's why UConn has the cleanest path out of all the elite teams in the sport right now to be a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. The third big thing I want to get to, St. John's, Kentucky, Saturday afternoon, 12:30 Eastern on CBS in the CBS Sports Classic, is a swing game for both. There were good vibes for Kentucky after last Saturday's win over Indiana at Rupp Arena. Jalen Lowe looked more like Jalen Lowe. Mohamed Diabate came back, one of the great glue guys in all of college basketball. There were really good vibes. St. John's has made an adjustment, moved Ian Jackson into the starting lineup. The chemistry, the role allocation over the last week and a half for St. John's, and most importantly, the defense is the best that it's been this season for Rick Pitino's squad. But the winner of this game is going to take tremendous momentum into its final bye game. Kentucky has Bellarmine on the 23rd. St. John's has Harvard on the 23rd. It's going to take tremendous momentum into its final bye game, and then the conference play, which obviously starts as we get ready to turn the calendar year. Now, Mark Pope, the head coach of Kentucky, who was the captain for Rick Pitino on the 1996 national title team at Kentucky, will be on Inside College Basketball Now Friday morning as an exclusive guest. And we taped the interview before we started this live show. And he confirmed to us that Jaden Quaintance, the transfer from Arizona State, who I've talked about for a long time on this show in the offseason, a guy I think that could be in competition to be a National Defensive Player of the Year candidate if he's healthy, could make his debut this season for Kentucky on Saturday against St. John's in the CBS Sports Classic. Jaden Quaintance had an ACL injury earlier this year. Mark Pope obviously said he's going to go through the next couple of days of practice and then be in a situation where he will make a decision along with Kentucky's medical folks whether or not Quaintance will play. The bottom line is this. If Jaden Quaintance plays on Saturday, it is going to drastically change what Kentucky looks like on the defensive side of the floor. And beyond that, even if Jaden Quaintance doesn't play on Saturday and he gets back soon, Kentucky is going to have a completely different look defensively with him and Mohamed Diabate now coming back healthy. And the winner of this game between St. John's and Kentucky is going to have a victory on its resume that will travel all the way to Selection Sunday. Because you have to remember how the quadrant system works. A quad one win is something that ultimately moves the needle the most in the eyes of the selection committee. So you want to get as many quad one wins as you can. Now, what does that mean? The net ratings, which are updated every single day, measure quad one wins like this. If you beat a team on your home court that's ranked in the top 30 of the net, that's a quad one win. If you beat a team on a neutral court that's ranked in the top 50 of the net, that's a quad one win. And if you beat a team on the road, in a true road game, that's in the top 75 of the net, that's a quad one win. This is going to be a quad one opportunity for both Kentucky and for St. John's. Kentucky's best win so far this season was at home against Indiana. St. John's best win so far this season in terms of beating a potential NCAA tournament team was in Las Vegas against Baylor. St. John's and Kentucky both have an opportunity to get their best win of the season Saturday afternoon in the CBS Sports Classic, Rick Pitino against Mark Pope. I will say this. I still have reservations about Kentucky's ability to be a better shooting team. I haven't seen that yet. Mark Pope will get more into that on Friday morning when we interviewed him. But with that said, I think you have to look really, really now at this game, Kentucky against St. John's. On Friday, I'm going to project 9 teams from the SEC to be in the NCAA tournament. I'm going to project 3 from the Big East. UConn, St. John's, and Seton Hall as of today. And again, Shaheen Holloway is doing as good a job this season with his team as any power conference coach is doing in America. But there's a lot of season left. And Seton Hall has to prove, starting Friday night at Providence against a very dangerous team, that it's going to be able to sustain this throughout the course of a season. And what I mean by that is this. St. John's has an opportunity now to get a quad 1 victory, and it may not get many quad 1 opportunities in the Big East unless things drastically change within the conference, which I don't see happening in the next 7 to 10 days, unless we see this weekend all of a sudden, Villanova beats Wisconsin on Friday night and they jump up in the net rankings, something like that. This game means more for St. John's than it does Kentucky, because St. John's plays in the Big East and Kentucky plays in the SEC. 9 teams projected on Friday by me out of the SEC and the NCAA tournament, 3 from the Big East. You do the math. Now, as far as the game itself, Kentucky is going to have an obvious advantage at point guard with Jalen Lowe. St. John's still has Ian Jackson finding his way, although he's put together several good games in a row. Dylan Darling had a nice game off the bench, but it looks like, he's best used as a backup. And then we're going to see these 2 front lines, Mitchell, Hopkins, Ejiofor, go up against potentially Diabate, Quaintance, Moreno. It is a made-for-TV game Saturday on CBS. But the game, ultimately at the end of the day, is more valuable for St. John's because Kentucky is going to have a Pez dispenser of quad 1 opportunities when it gets into the SEC. Want to hear from you. Want you to obviously get your comments into the chat on anything I talked about or anything else that's on your mind in relation to college basketball. I am also going to give you my weekly Rothstein rankings on the other side of the break, looking at the top 5 point guards in the sport. Jon Rothstein here on Inside College Basketball Now.
Critics are buzzing about the new season of Yellow Jackets.
This is not healthy.
Yellow Jackets' new season now streaming on the Paramount Plus with Showtime plan.
All right, Jon Rothstein back here on Inside College Basketball Now. Want to remind you to subscribe to Inside College Basketball Now on both Apple and Spotify. We want to be your Bible for the college basketball season and beyond. We are the only college basketball podcast coming to you 52 weeks out of the calendar year. Also want to remind you to like and subscribe to Inside College Basketball Now on YouTube. We want to get to 300 likes on this show. And again, want to remind you from a programming perspective, Mondays and Thursdays at 1 o'clock Eastern during the 25-26 college basketball season, we will be coming to you live at 1 o'clock. Make it part of your routine. If you can't get with us then because you have a meeting, get with us on Apple or Spotify on your commute home, or get with us in the early morning when you're working out. Want to make sure that you're a part of our army each and every show. And remember, we are going to have additional episodes each week with exclusive interviews with some of the biggest and best names of the sport. Friday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern, we will be joined by Kentucky's Mark Pope. But first off, I want to get you right now with my weekly Rothstein rankings. And this is going to be obviously something we're going to do every Thursday, getting you set with a category that I'm going to look at. I'm going to go 5 through 1 right now. In my opinion, the 5 point guards that are playing the best basketball in the sport. And number 5, I'm going with Jeremy Fears at Michigan State. He's close to averaging a double-double. He has been the gas in the engine for Tom Izzo's team, who's been comfortably in the Big Ten. It's obviously top tier all season, and in the top 10 nationally. Jeremy Fears, again, I think he's somebody who needs to continue to work on his outside shot, but he's the best table-setting point guard in college basketball. He may not be the best point guard, but in terms of tallying the assist totals, Fears right now averaging over 9 a game. Number 4, Darius Acuff from Arkansas, somebody I talked about earlier in the show. Darius Acuff, in his last 4 games, I'll say it again, 19.5 points, 9 assists, 36 assists, and 7 turnovers in his last 4 games. That's better than 4-1. He deserves to be mentioned as an All-American candidate and one of the best point guards right now under John Calipari as a freshman. I'm not saying he's going to be there at the end of the year. We have to wait and see what happens. But right now, with the way he's playing, Darius Acuff, with the way he's producing, is on a trajectory to be in the conversation to be one of the best freshman point guards that have played for John Calipari and join that long lineage of floor generals that have played for the Hall of Fame coach. Number 3, Alabama's LeBaron Philon. He has continued to blossom. I did Alabama's games in the NCAA tournament last year in Cleveland. First 2 rounds, wins over Robert Morris and St. Mary's. You could see LeBaron Philon was waiting to bide his time behind Mark Sears. Grant Nelson was on that team, Cliff Amori. He was the freshman on a team with 50-year seniors, and he has now performed like an All-American guard and an SEC Player of the Year candidate. He's a top 3 guard in the sport right now. Nothing like hydration. Number 2, and this is relation to winning, Jaden Bradley from Arizona. Jaden Bradley is playing like a first-team All-American. Jaden Bradley has been ridiculous in Arizona's big wins. In Arizona's big wins over Florida, Alabama, UCLA, and UConn, Jaden Bradley is shooting better than 50% from the field and 50% from 3. He's averaging 18, a couple of rebounds, a couple of assists. He is playing right now at a first-team All-American caliber level. He's been that good. It reminds me of a couple of years ago in 23-24. People didn't want cough's killing me. People didn't want necessarily or didn't think at the start of the 23-24 season that Jamal Shead maybe was a first-team All-American, but eventually he got his way there. That's what needs to be looked at with Jaden Bradley. Don't be afraid to talk about him as a first-team All-American. And then number 1's obviously Braden Smith from Purdue. I think because Purdue lost that game to Iowa State, I think because people have an expectation that this guy is so special, he maybe hasn't gotten the same attention that he's gotten the last couple of years. But if you're talking about the best point guards in the sport, you have to talk about Braden Smith. Let's get to the chat right now. I'm having trouble breathing here. I'm so excited to get with you in the chat. I'm going to grab a cough drop, but I also want to get in the chat and get a swig here. Love your comments. Let's go right now and see what you guys want to talk about. A lot of angry Iowa State fans. What else is new? Okay. Luke Dubb 5393. Should go into my bag here, get a little more cough drops. Luke Dubb 5393. Other than Darius Acuff and Trevin Brazile, who is the most important player in Arkansas in getting them to a deep tournament run? Well, Malik Thomas, you would say, would make a lot of sense. I think, I talked to Grant McCaslin this week, the Texas Tech coach, who lost, obviously, to Arkansas last week in Dallas. He said the game changed for them, for Texas Tech, when Trevin Brazile went to the 5 spot. That's another coach's perspective. But look, to go far in the NCAA tournament, to go to the second weekend and beyond, Arkansas went to the second weekend last year, you're going to have to be in a situation where your most talented players play at their best. For Arkansas, that's Acuff, that's Brazile, that's Malik Thomas. Let's see what other questions we got here. Rickest Martyrs says it's just flat out delusional if we're acting that Arizona is above Michigan right now. Well, I'll say this. Arizona has a better resume than Michigan. Now, I know Michigan won the Players Era Festival, beat Auburn, won at TCU, beat Wake Forest, but Arizona has a slightly better resume. Michigan, though, has eviscerated teams at the highest of levels. Michigan is winning games now, and it's still very early in the season, by a higher margin of victory than the Kentucky team in 14-15. That won 38-1 and lost to Wisconsin in the Final Four. Matthew Page 8358 says, is it fair to compare This Gonzaga team, the last year's Michigan team, stud front court, freshman PG, veteran swing guys. Well, you said freshman PG. The point guard last year on Michigan was Trey Donaldson, who's now at Miami. So I wouldn't say that. John, as it stands right now, which mid-major team is most poised to make a Cinderella run in the tournament? Look, I want to see how San Diego State does Saturday night against Arizona, because San Diego State, as of today, was ranked 82nd in the net. Looks like nowhere near an at-large candidate. You have to look, in my opinion, at St. Louis with Josh Schertz, Jared Calhoun's Utah State team, James Jones at Yale. That's what I would go for right now. A lot of angry Iowa State fans right here. User 22676. I have a question. Why does TJ Otzelberger not have a slogan? Well, slogans cannot be forced. You know, folks in the lab are always kind of keeping an eye on like what we could do to make a new slogan, but you can't force a slogan. Mark Few doesn't have a slogan. Bill Self doesn't have a slogan. These are Hall of Fame head coaches. If a slogan comes, it hits, and then we test it on social media. That's the bottom line. Okay. Enjoyed your questions in chat. Let's get to 3 good nuggets here before I choke on my cough drop. Nugget number 1, getting defensive. Texas Tech is giving up an average of 80.2 points per game in 5 games this season against power conference opponents. That's not going to cut in the Big 12. Nugget number 2, down and almost out. I'm talking about San Diego State. The Aztecs have to beat Arizona Saturday night in Phoenix to have any chance of an at-large berth in the NCAA tournament. Nugget number 3, burgeoning bench in Charlottesville. I had talked about Virginia earlier in the show. Virginia's 4 primary reserves. Ugonna Onyenso, Devin Tillis, Jakari White, and Chance Mallory are combining to average 34.2 off the bench. That's impressive. Keep an eye on Ryan Odom's squad. 3 games to watch now over the weekend. St. John's, Kentucky, obviously. Arkansas, Houston, obviously. Both those games on CBS. I'll be on the Arkansas-Houston game, 5:30 Eastern. Saturday night at Madison Square Garden, Duke plays Texas Tech. 3 under-the-radar games this weekend. North Carolina against Ohio State in the CBS Sports Classic. Tar Heels playing great basketball. Auburn, Purdue, Saturday night at Gainbridge Fieldhouse in Indianapolis, and then Arizona, San Diego State. What I referenced. Want everybody to have an awesome weekend. It's going to be a great weekend of college basketball. Get your fluids. It is cold and flu season. Some of us are battling. Not as well as others, but I think I'm on the other side of this thing. And want to remind you once again to subscribe to Inside College Basketball Now on both Apple and Spotify. We want to be your Bible for the college basketball season and beyond. We are the only college basketball podcast coming to you 52 weeks out of the calendar year. And also, like and subscribe to Inside College Basketball Now on YouTube. We need an army with us each and every show. And we will have live shows every Monday and Thursday during the 25-26 college basketball season at 1 o'clock Eastern. And in addition to that, we will have exclusive interviews with the biggest and best names in the sport throughout the week. And Friday's guest is a big one. Kentucky's Mark Pope. It hits YouTube at 8 a.m. Eastern on Friday. This is only December, but this was Inside College Basketball Now.